The Fox News decision desk can now officially project that Donald Trump will become the 47th president of the United States.
Last night, Brett Baier, Fox News Channel, announcing the projection, Fox was first and correct, that Donald Trump has once again been elected president of the United States. Our 45th president will be our 47th president, and it wasn't close. I was on the Fox broadcast channel throughout the day, throughout the evening. We were on for hours. We were on for 7 hours, 8 hours, I think, on TV. And as the evening progressed, the picture got clearer and clearer. And in the wee hours of the morning, the call came in. It is an extraordinary development in American politics. I think generations of kids will be reading about this era in their history books, in their textbooks for a very long time. It has been tumultuous. It has been bumpy. It has been controversial. The twists and turns have been stunning at times. And the latest chapter is another presidency for Donald Trump. He shocked them. He stunned them. He caught them off guard in 2016. They beat him 4 years later. He decided to come back and try again. They threw everything that they had at him. And he crushed them. He crushed them. Now, I said on this show, and I was very open with you guys, going into the election, I didn't really know exactly how I felt about what was going to happen. And what did I say? I said that my head was telling me one thing, my gut was telling me something else. My head was telling me the data, the numbers, the fundamentals, the things that I know about elections would lead to a Trump win. My gut was suggesting Kamala Harris would win. And I also made plain, openly, the reason why I think at least partially I had that gut feeling was because after almost like the sneak attack of 2016, they did not know what hit them in 2016. They were completely expecting to win, then they didn't. Once they regained their bearings and started the resistance, every major election that they had from that point forward was either a Democratic win or a big Republican underperformance at the federal level. 2018, 2020, Senate elections in Georgia 2021, 2022. So I think a lot of us were just conditioned to the Democrats have figured out after 2016 how to beat this man or how to marshal the sentiment against this man for their political and electoral purposes. So that was why my gut was tugged in that direction, but my head stayed in the same place. And this is something I would talk about basically on a daily basis, occasionally with our guests, right? We would run through the numbers. We would talk about polling errors. We would talk about Trump polling better than he ever had before. Point after point after point. I would talk to Mary Catherine Ham on the phone almost every day. And we would talk about not just the gut concerns, but the head, the cerebral, the intellectual case that Trump should be the favorite and probably was. And another thing that I said on this show and in my writing at townhall.com was if Trump were to end up winning, in retrospect, it would look so obvious because the evidence would have been there the whole time. So let me sit here and tell you today, the day after the election, it is so obvious why Donald Trump won. The evidence was there the whole time. It was staring us in the face. We told you about it on a regular basis. My head was right. My gut was wrong. And that's what happened. And by the way, it was not a nail biter. Once things started moving in the direction that they were going to move, it seemed like the writing was on the wall relatively early. It took a while to count the votes and for each of the dominoes to fall, but fall they did. Now, because I'm sure some of you are like, all right, Guy, you kind of hedged. You said your head one thing, your gut the other thing. You didn't make a final prediction. That's true. I'll own that. But I did make a few predictions. One of the predictions was, despite everyone telling us it was the closest election ever and it was going to go on for days and days and maybe weeks, what did I say? I said, I think we're going to know on election night. I think the factors are going to cascade in one direction or the other, and we will either have a call on election night or it'll be pretty clear who has won that night. And clearly that's what happened. We finally made the call in the early hours of this morning. I'm working on very little sleep, so bear with me today, please. Over these next 3 hours, I was on air for 11 hours yesterday. But that's what happened. We knew. And here's one other thing that I predicted, and this was going back, a week or two now, and it feels almost like ancient history. It's amazing how news cycles go. But the Madison Square Garden rally that producer Christine went to and reported on, and we talked about it, the story that we were told coming out of that rally by the news media was the insult comic in the warm-up act was the biggest story in the country, and it was going to be very costly for Donald Trump and the Republicans, and Hispanics were furious, and Puerto Ricans were furious, and there's Puerto Ricans in Florida, and there's a Puerto Rican and Hispanic community specifically in eastern Pennsylvania, and this is all going to be very, very bad, and it's very bigoted, and can you believe? And they were 10 out of 10 on that. And I sat here behind this microphone and I told you, BS. It is not even really much of a news story at all, let alone the biggest news story, let alone an election mover. It's not going to happen. I felt confident it was not going to happen. They said, oh, we've got the momentum now, or she's got the momentum now, and down the close, they're moving to us. The late deciders are moving to the Dems and moving to Kamala Harris. Well, guess what? I saw exit polling an hour ago or so that showed late deciders broke for Trump. Guess what else? In Hispanic communities in eastern Pennsylvania, Donald Trump overperformed. And guess what else? Osceola County, I believe is how you say it, in central Florida, which is heavily Puerto Rican, flipped from blue to red. Biden won it, and then Trump won it last night. That is a heavily Puerto Rican county in Florida. And then last but not least, and probably my favorite, Republicans last night won the governorship of Puerto Rico. These people, you want to know why the media is so distrusted and how they are losing their grip on the narrative, and that is clearer than ever? We'll talk about that with Molly Hemingway coming up. They insisted that this was a massive, game-changing, election-shifting, vote-moving story because some insult comic did a bad insult joke. And I may not be perfect, I might not get everything right, but I absolutely knew in my bones that they were bluffing and they were trying to turn something into something. And I said, nope, that's not going to happen. And sure enough, if anything, you could make the case that it somehow helped Trump. It's just amazing. So here's what happened. He swept the battlegrounds. We haven't called Arizona yet. We haven't called Nevada yet. It's over. He's won both places. We called Michigan earlier today. Pennsylvania and Wisconsin were the dominoes that fell finally at the end last night. On Fox Broadcast Network, I'll toot my own horn a little bit here. Before we made calls, I was like, I think North Carolina will be the first call. And then we called it. I said, up next will be Georgia. And then we called it. I said, I think we might get Pennsylvania sometime soon. And then in came the call. And finally, they're like, well, gosh, now it's just one more state to put him over the top. I wonder what it'll be. And I was looking at the percentage of the vote in and how I was feeling and my sources on the ground. I said, I think it's going to be Wisconsin and he'll win the presidency. Then we called Wisconsin. Took till today to get to Michigan. Who knows when they'll call Nevada? Honestly, I think they can call it right now. Not my call, above my pay grade, but that state is over. And so's Arizona. It's over. Trump has swept all 7 battlegrounds. That's not an official Fox News call. That's an official Guy Benson call. Trump has swept the battleground states. Patrick Ruffini, who's a Republican pollster, he got ridiculed. He put out like a Trump +4 poll in Pennsylvania. Everyone's like, whoa, that's a crazy outlier. Speaking of crazy outliers, remember the Ann Selzer poll from Iowa a few days ago? We talked about it here. I expressed my deep skepticism of it, and I made a very comprehensive case for why I felt like it made absolutely no sense. And I talked to people that I know at the highest levels of Iowa politics who were like, there's no way. But Ann Selzer, the most respected pollster, who, by the way, leaked her numbers early to Democrats, we know that, tried to shift the narrative of a whole election because, well, if he was down 3 in Iowa, surely everything else is gone for him. Well, guess what? He won Iowa by almost 14 points last night. The Des Moines Register-Selzer poll was only off by a mere 17 points. Just a bit outside, Ann. Wow. But Patrick Ruffini said, hey, Trump's going to win Pennsylvania by, 4 or 5? And everyone's like, oh, it's a Republican pollster. Oh. By the way, some of those Republican-leaning pollsters, Atlas, Trafalgar, people dump on them. They're looking pretty good, smelling pretty sweet this morning, aren't they? Ruffini noted that the electorate last night was R+3, R+4. Where have we heard that before? Oh, that's right, the Gallup data that came out a few months ago. I wrote about it. We talked about it. Flashing lights. The fundamentals. Inflation, the cost of everything. Right track, wrong track. Dissatisfaction with the economy. A deeply unpopular incumbent president and administration. An out-of-control border. International chaos. All of that, plus the Gallup numbers, the electorate composition, the polling, even the polling, better than ever for Trump. All of it. The early vote. Republicans doing shockingly, historically well. We were told at every step, well, that doesn't matter. Well, actually, that doesn't matter. And here's the very erudite explanation for why this other thing matters. And, it's going to be Liz Cheney voters that decide this thing. Or you go down the list. The joke at Madison Square Garden. Well, guess what? The fundamentals were right. My head, knowing these things, was right. And so now we have Donald Trump not only sweeping all 7 battleground states, he'll end up certainly north of 300 electoral votes. There is a very, very good chance, I'm not going to fully say it's guaranteed, but let's face it, Donald Trump is almost certainly going to win the popular vote on top of everything else. And he's done it with the most diverse coalition a Republican presidential candidate has ever had. Improvements with Black Americans, big improvements with Latinos. NBC's exits show him winning Latino men. Arab Americans. I mean, there's so many different demos you can talk about. And the freak out that they're having on the left because they are so wedded to identity politics, seeing that crumbling, it's like the whole way that they structure their brains and understand the world and politics is slipping away before their eyes, and it's really hard for a lot of them to process. But Donald Trump, the guy that they call a racist, Nazi, fascist, just did that. And he's going to win the popular vote, so that takes away another one of their whining excuses that they often use, which is the Electoral College. What else did I say on this show for a while? Why is he doing rallies in Long Island? Why is he doing rallies at Coachella? I said, if he loses, that'll look dumb and like a waste of time. But if he wins, he's going for the popular vote. And guess what he's probably going to do? Whether you voted for him or not, whether you like him or not, whether you are thrilled today or just dejected beyond belief, or kind of somewhere in between, which is where I am, closer to thrilled, but not all the way there. What happened last night is historic. It is extraordinary. And we're going to be talking about it and breaking it down not just for the next few days and weeks. People will be talking about this election, the mandate that comes with it, the realignment that it represents for years.